I thought it was hilarious. I love when Drew's the butt of a good joke.
Drew probably hasn't even seen it.
I haven't seen. Oh, did you put a? Did you make a?
You were the. This is Farm to Markets number 15, and today we're talking about if the stock market has topped, if you should do a Roth conversion, and how to win an Oktoberfest Steinholding competition. Historically, September, October, and November are the most volatile time of year for the stock market. And this September and October have been no exception, which leads many people to wonder if the stock market has reached the top and is about to pull back. Drew, for people who might be thinking about this, what would you say to them?
I guess I would say that, well, first of all, economic forecasting it's an act of sheer hubris, which unfortunately only incites people to do it. There's a few reasons why you shouldn't try to time the market, whether that's the market top or the market bottom. First of all, no one can predict what the market's going to do, not even the experts. Ben Bernanke, the president of the Federal Reserve back in 2007, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect that troubles in the housing market would not spill over into the economy. We all remember 2008, it certainly did, and it had a pretty wide effects too. Also, economists joke that the market has successfully predicted 9 out of the last 5 recessions. So if the markets and the leading experts can't predict if this is the market top, then I wouldn't try worrying about it either. 2, the odds are stacked against you. There was a Dalbar report in 2018 that showed investors that were invested in the S&P 500 on average underperformed the S&P 500, mainly due to their frequency of trading. They tried timing when the market was up, and they tried getting in when the market was down, and they would have been better off just holding the S&P 500. 3, if you try and time the market top, you can't just be right once, you have to be right twice. You have to buy at the right time, and you have to sell at the right time, and you have to get those 2 trades right again, and again. So my advice is try to ignore the warning signs and stick with your investment plan. I'm not saying that markets can stir up icky feelings sometimes. If you do, give us a call. We'll be happy to talk it through.
Alex?
Well, Drew mentioned the S&P 500. I looked up the last few years of data, and early 2018, we saw a decline of about 10% in the S&P 500 before it resumed its upward march. Fall 2018 was down 17.5%. Spring 19, down 6.5%. Late summer 19, down 6%. And then fall 2020, we'll exclude the COVID crash, is down about just under 7%. And now we're down around 5%. So, I mean, every fall we seem to go through this over the last few years. So if this one is concerning, it's so far the most mild correction over the last few years. I should also point out that while there are reasons to be concerned, such as like the Chinese property developers situation causing a financial crisis that spills over into the U.S., it's important to note that the U.S. has not imported a recession since before the Civil War, and we've been the world's largest consumer market since Reconstruction. If anybody's going to be able to survive a Chinese property collapse, it'll be us. If inflation keeps going up, we'll see what that does. But, you know, for now, it looks like a pretty typical fall decline. And for now, also, I don't see China's property situation destroying the American economy. So I think no, it's not the market top, so to speak.
Joe?
The market is not at the top. It's like a ring on a tree that's growing. There will be more rings on the tree decades from now than there are today. That certainly has been the case. I often tell people that I'm in an industry that only matters if Armageddon doesn't come. The odds of Armageddon coming are incredibly low. I've been through multiple down markets, and quite frankly, even though we're starting to hear concern from our clients, the market is down, what, 5% from its high, a few weeks ago. We're at the point we are so spoiled that a 5% drop gets people all jacked up. The fact of the matter is that if inflation really is the case, people who own assets in an inflationary environment are going to do much better than people who own cash in an inflationary environment. It's always so much more fun being investment advisors when the market is going up, and our daily phone calls are always fun, and we feel like we're ultimate professionals when we get to report good reports. And it's not a whole lot of fun when accounts are down from last statement and we have to make those declarations, but that's why we get paid the big bucks. So where we earn our pay is when we tell people to do the unnatural thing, and that is stay in the market when it feels like everybody else is getting out.
It would be nice if the Wall Street Journal, instead of reporting the daily moves of the market, would report them over a 1 year and a 2 year period. If you look at it, the S&P 500 over the last year, the rolling year period, so like as of the last 12 months, is up about 28%, and it's down about 5%, over the last, couple of weeks here. And for the last 2 years, it's up 47%, and that's after it's dropped 5%. So over the 2 year period, you're up almost 50% from where you were, 2 years ago, and almost 30% were from where you were a year ago. And if major news outlets report these numbers, it probably would not be as painful or disconcerting for people watching their money move back and forth. That said, it is important to remember is that for some people who have $1 million or $2 million, and they do see drops of 5 to 10%, for some people that's a year's wages that they lost in a matter of weeks, and that certainly can be very, very stressful and disconcerting. So is that I certainly understand when people are when people start to get nervous and on edge from this, because it's a lot of money moving around in a short amount of time. On average, the market sees a correction about once every year. So getting a 10% correction in 2021 would certainly not be a huge deal from a historical standpoint. And these corrections, they're kind of like wildfires. Here in Montana, we get a forest fire every year. And there's a month or two where it's extremely unpleasant. It's like 100 degrees outside. It's smoky. There's nothing to do because you can't see anything. And if you go outside, your eyes sting and your nostrils burn. But eventually you get through it because it's only a month or two out of the year. And stock market corrections are kind of the same thing. And it does essentially the same thing a wildfire does, where if it burns all the trees and the underbrush, it does a good job of clearing out all that fuel so that if there's a lightning strike in the future, we don't get as big as a fire. And new plants and trees can grow and do all kinds of things for the ecosystem. And it's the same thing for the stock market. It kind of clears out some of the overvalued nature of the stock market and kind of gives everybody the gut check for the year, so they can kind of reevaluate how worthwhile some of these companies are, and then they keep going. So about once a year, we get a 10% decline, and historically that's pretty average.
I'm surprised none of us brought this up before, but there's always that thing known as the December phenomenon in October, where institutional investors are cleaning up their books for tax harvesting, and everybody wants to get ahead of everybody else. So it used to be that people would do their tax selling in the month of December, and then they figured, well, if those guys are doing their tax selling in December, we'll do our tax selling in November. And now it keeps moving back and back to the point where it's moved pretty entrenched in the third quarter. And when that happens, we see that stocks might be doing just fine fundamentally, but money managers are trying to figure out ways that they can add tax avoidance value to their clients. And so they're selling stocks, and that causes additional volatility. But generally speaking, if you just hang into the market, you'll get through that and go be Rumpelstiltskin, go to sleep for 20 years and come back and take a look at your accounts.
Well, I guess I'll have to find a new newsletter topic to write this month. I usually mention the October effect this month, but no, I agree with you. I like the saying, the only people that get hurt on roller coasters are the ones that jump off. And if you're invested for the long time, you're on the roller coaster. If you're so long into your investment career, you may not even be invested in the market, depending on which strategy you're in. So stick to the plan.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point, is that if the market's going down, when we do investor profile questionnaires and build portfolios, they're built with the idea that the market's going to drop. And so realistically, you know, you shouldn't have to do anything when the market goes down, because your portfolio should already be allocated for such an event according to your age and investment horizon. And so that's a great point. All right, Roth conversions have been a darling of the financial industry for a long time, but have recently been put in the crosshairs of the American Families Plan that is moving through Congress, causing some people to wonder if they should be doing a Roth conversion. Joe, how would you answer that question?
You know, I treat Roth conversions kind of like putting a pond on your property, and it's like the county commissioners came up with a new law that 3 months from now they're going to ban people from putting ponds in their property. And they go, honey, do you think we should put a pond in our property? Because if we don't do it now, we'll never be able to do it ever. Well, if you were thinking about doing a pond all along, it probably makes sense for you to put the pond on your property. But same with Roth conversions, is that if it makes sense for you, do it. What most people don't realize that when you do a Roth conversions, it can be a significant tax event. You know, for example, if you have $100,000 in a traditional IRA or a 401k, and you want to convert that to a Roth, that may push you into a much higher tax bracket. You could spend tens of thousands of dollars more in taxes than you would have if you just left it in the traditional IRA or the 401k. I think the best thing that people ought to do is just have the conversation with their investment advisors to see if a Roth conversion on an individual basis makes sense for them. Granted, there's been a lot of talk on Wall Street, a lot of talk in Washington, D.C. about doing away with these Roth conversions, because some people are afraid that their neighbor might really profit from doing so. And by golly, the last thing in the world we want our wealthy neighbor to do is to succeed. So they want to take it away from everybody. But we got to remember that not every American is rich, but lots of people could benefit from a Roth conversion, and making it more difficult for them to do it ultimately hurts everybody.
Drew?
I agree with what my dad said. I guess I'd like to lightly touch up on what a Roth conversion is. So basically, it's taking a traditional IRA, an IRA funded with pre-tax dollars, and converting it to a Roth IRA by paying the taxes now. So if you have a $50,000 traditional IRA and you convert it into a Roth IRA, that's a taxable event. So now you owe taxes on that $50,000, and you've effectively created a Roth IRA, which when you take it out on the other end will not be taxed. A lot of people get anchored to that $50,000 or $20,000, whatever it may be. They are really a good deal if it works out for you, because it's the deferment on the tax growth that really has the major impact. So if you convert like a $50,000 traditional IRA to a Roth, if that gets 6 to 8% return over the next 30 years, that may potentially be a $500,000 Roth IRA when you start taking it out. Now that's a really good deal. There's a lot of things to consider. You can't just say, yes, it's good for me. No, it's not. There's a lot of questions we would ask. Typically, you do it when you think you're going to be in a higher marginal tax bracket in the future. Also, you need to make sure that you have the cash on hand to pay the taxes. If you have to sell some assets to come up with the money to pay the taxes, or you simply don't have it, might not be a good deal. You want to make sure that you're not going to be touching the money for at least 5 years. With Roth IRAs, you can't take out any money before age 59 and a half in the first 5 years without incurring that 10% penalty. There's a few more, but if you're thinking about doing a Roth conversion, come see us and we'll see if it's a good fit.
Alex?
Well, there's not a whole lot left to say. Most of my bullet points have already been stated. So I would just reiterate, make sure it works for you. One of the more interesting things in reading about this that I saw is, the conversion tax, it's 24%. If you don't pay that out of pocket and instead take it out of the money that you currently have in your traditional IRA, you could be severely handicapping your brand new Roth. So one of the most common pieces of advice is have the cash independent of your retirement account to pay that conversion tax. Beyond that, really just talk to your financial advisor or tax professional, make sure it's right for you. Again, yeah, just about everything else has already been touched on, so I'll leave it at that.
All right, Joe, it's we started with you, didn't we?
No, you didn't.
Oh, it didn't? Oh, geez, I
No.
can't remember who I started with. Well, why don't you give us your thoughts?
You did. You talked about the
Oh,
bond scenario.
I thought you were talking about the next question. My bust. Yes, you did talk to me already.
All right, senior citizen moment for the both of us.
Yes, that'll be your outtake for next week.
Yeah, there you go. So, like I was saying, most of the things that we got, for specifically to the American Families Plan, it's only going to be banned for people who are making essentially over $450,000 if you file your taxes as a joint married couple, or for about $400,000 for single taxpayers. The one caveat, though, is conversions are banned for people making over that amount of money. However, it's not banned until 2032, which is 10 years from now. So the idea isn't necessarily, there could be a number of reasons why there's a 10-year limit on this. And it's speculated that the government is trying to basically say, hey, you only got 10 years to do this, so you better get it done in this 10 years. So you have people making over 400,000 doing Roth conversions over the next 10 years. And supposedly that'll generate taxable income that they can incorporate into the budget, which happens to be scored over a 10-year period. So if you're trying to pass some pretty expensive legislation, that would be one tactic to raise some revenue to do it. If you're trying to do some planning, current administration at the most is only going to be in there for 8 years. So if you have 2 years past that, it creates some planning challenges, because we don't know who's going to be in office or what party is going to be in office 10 years from now, and if that'll if they just will repeal that or what. So just a caveat to the point there. But as far as pre-tax monies that you contribute to after-tax monies that you contribute to an IRA, that goes away as of December 31st of this year. So just some clarification there.
One more thing I'd like to throw in, if people are now eager to do a Roth conversion just because the clock may be ticking, they are irreversible. So if you rush to do one, you can't go back.
Yeah, there's no backsies anymore. So.
And I'll finish up with one last point, is that this is all just discussion at this point. The odds of this American Families Plan being passed in its original text is almost very, very close to zero. And being able to pass this stuff, I don't see it coming down the pike. And with this, these 10-year Roth conversion rules, anticipating, they actually take those tax revenue assumptions and put it into, say, this is how we're going to pay for all this infrastructure spending. And what they don't take into effect is that wealthy people will just say, okay, I won't convert. And then there's no money to pay for the infrastructure bill. Because if you punch somebody in the face for walking down a particular street, they won't walk down that street. And if you tax people by taking their money out, or you basically say, if you leave your money in your traditional IRA until we get booted out of office, and then the next, our opposing party gets into power, that's when we'll do our converting. You're not going to see people, they're not going to do what you think they're going to do just because you think they'll do it.
People respond to incentives. Wow, my mind is blown.
No, but good caveat is that the American Families Plan has not been passed yet. So that's important to remember. All right, now that it's fall, October parties are in full swing, and the most ardent competitors may be wondering how to win a Steinholding competition. Alex, what advice would you give these people?
Well, I've been in a few of them. I've done okay. The best advice really is to just train holding your arm out with something heavy in it. There's not really anything else you can do. You definitely want to do it with a mug, though, and not even like a barbell or anything, because there's a specific way you have to hold the mug. You can't put your thumb on the top of the mug, for example. Your back has to be straight. Your arm has to be parallel to the ground. At least if you're being judged correctly. So really the best advice is to just fill up a mug and just sit there and hold it for a little while, and do that every day if you want to get good at it. There's some weird muscles involved in holding a beer stein out straight from your body for several minutes at a time. And you don't use them for a whole lot else most of the time. So just practice.
Drew?
I'll have to echo Alex. I've actually never participated in one, but reading up on it today, it's actually pretty interesting how into it people get. I guess it's a lot of abs. People who train to be world-class stein holders do a lot of sit-ups. They do a lot of bicep curls. They do a lot of deltoid. They do a lot of arm raises. From a physics standpoint and a physiological standpoint, just have shorter arms, because basically it's just a class 3 lever. You have your shoulder as the fulcrum, the stein, your hand as the load, and you're basically a cantilever. So the longer your arm, the higher the torque, which means the stronger you have to be. So have shorter arms, I guess. Or if you have really long arms, find something else to be good at.
Have your arms shrunken.
There you go.
Joe, do you have any advice on this topic?
Well, I've never engaged in beer stein holding, but I will say that the best time to start training is in November, not right smack dab in the middle of the Oktoberfest festival season. If you're going to start training now, it's a little too late. There's an old saying that if you want to be really good at push-ups, then the best way to get good at push-ups is do push-ups. If you're going to win at a beer stein holding contest, do a lot of beer stein holding. And I would say that, like a lot of other endurance events that is half mental and half physical, the best thing to do is just go out there and hold the beer stein for as long as you possibly can. And when you can no longer do it, take a 1-minute break and do that 5 times. And then next time, reduce the break from 1 minute to 55 seconds. And then reduce the next day to 50 seconds, and then reduce to the point where your recovery time is only 10 seconds. And if you can do that, I think you're going to see improvements in your beer stein holding capabilities.
Nice. Ironically, you should not consume alcohol 2 days before a beer stein holding competition, as there's plenty of research that will show you that alcohol consumption before an endurance event will seriously hinder your capabilities. So probably, one of the most crucial aspects is you not consume the beverage in your stein 48 hours before competition. So that would be key. That'd be number one. And then, there's actually an entire, Drew and I are talking about, there's actually an entire association. There's the U.S. Steinholding Association that will give you plenty of training tips, and they'll go through the rules on how to accomplish this. And they're pretty serious about it. I mean, nobody over there appears to be joking. It's a pretty serious thing. And then I looked it up on YouTube, and I'll include the link in the notes in this video to some of the Steinholding competitions. And there's one, I think the record in 2018 was set by a guy named Lenny, whose name I can't pronounce because it's a long German last name, and I'm not even gonna try, but I think this time is 21 minutes and 17 seconds holding a stein out in front of his body. And it is a sight to behold. I mean, the anguish on his face at like minute 20 is certainly something you may want to experience in your lifetime.
Looking good. Hey, fix the thumb. Fix the thumb. Lock him out here, number 14. Lock him out. Get it up, Nate. Get it up. You're good, Eddie. You're good, Carl.
But it's pretty intense.
So Lenny, is he like 3 feet tall with a 12-inch?
Right, he's like Danny DeVito.
He's stout. I'll tell you that. He's stout. These guys, they appear to have lots of core strength, but this isn't something. This is something where you can have it's clear that a lot of them consume beer on a regular basis, because it's kind of like baseball, where you can be 45 and out of weight and overweight and still be out there playing at the highest level in the sport. So, and I've read some of these like training logs, and there was one guy, lamenting how he was sitting in Central Park, listening to everybody having fun in the Oktoberfest event behind him. And he's sitting there eating Greek yogurt and power bars, trying to like carbo load or whatever before his beer Steinholding competition. So he does the best he can. Is you kind of feel bad for him, but then you realize, it's beer Steinholding. It's like his life can't be that hard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for number 15.